So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our monthly community education presentation. This month, we are focusing on the topic of mental health in adoption and foster care settings. And our presenter for today is Rosalynne Sommer, who is the Director of Foster Care and Adoption at Bellefaire JCB. We're very happy to have her joining us today and educating us on this important topic that many families may have questions about. Since we are a smaller group today, we'll definitely have time to answer your questions. Please do remain muted throughout the presentation and utilize the chat feature if there are questions, and feel free to ask those questions while Rosalynne is presenting and put them in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat throughout the presentation, and we can pause to address a question if it's pertaining to something on the slide that Rosalynne is currently presenting, and we'll also have time at the end. So as I said at the beginning, this is being recorded and will be posted to the NAMI Greater Cleveland YouTube channel later this week. And I also want to say a few words about NAMI before we move forward. So NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It was founded in 1979 in Wisconsin by a group of mothers of children with mental illness, specifically schizophrenia. And they formed NAMI as a grassroots coalition around their kitchen tables because they wanted to grow a movement to support families affected by mental health conditions, provide more education and acknowledgement and recognition and support in their local communities. NAMI is now represented by state and local affiliates in all 50 states and is the largest grassroots mental health organization of its kind. NAMI Greater Cleveland is the local NAMI affiliate that serves Cuyahoga County, and our work is dedicated to improving quality of life for individuals with mental illness and their families by providing education, support, information and referral, and advocacy. We offer support groups for people with mental illness, support groups for families. We have our 8-week educational courses, family to family, peer to peer, which are designed to support individuals learning to come to terms with the diagnosis and learn how to move forward. We do extensive outreach in the communities with different audiences like law enforcement, healthcare professionals, universities, schools, educating folks on mental health. We have a helpline that's available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. You can call that line if you have any questions about accessing mental health services or referral to other resources in the community that may be supportive or helpful for a person affected by mental illness. And NAMI also supports advocacy in the sense of raising awareness about mental illness, reducing the stigma around mental health, doing legislative advocacy at the state and national levels to support greater funding for mental health services, policies that make mental health a public health priority, and just contributing to an overall movement that makes mental health something that it is acceptable and safe to talk about in community. So that is NAMI's programs and services in a nutshell. With that being said, I will allow Rosalynne to begin her presentation and introduce herself to us and introduce her work with Bellefaire and educate us on this important topic. So thank you all for being here.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I've been looking forward to today for quite some time and taking your time out of your busy lives to participate. So Bellefaire, for those of you who do not know, is a nonprofit based in Shaker Heights in Cuyahoga County, but we do also have offices in Medina County, Lorain County, and Summit County. We work with youth across the span and their families, not just in foster care and with adoption, but we're in school-based services, home-based services, outpatient services. So any type of mental health services, from therapy to psychological testing to psychiatry, residential treatment, foster care and adoption, we are involved. And so if you haven't heard of us, I definitely encourage you to check out our website, or feel free to reach out after the presentation. If you have questions about Bellefaire outside of this presentation, I'm happy to guide and support. We do a lot in the Northeast Ohio region. So jumping to today's presentation. So as the Director of Foster Care and Adoption, this is really my purview at the agency and where a lot of my energy and time goes towards. We run a treatment foster care program here at Bellefaire, so everything is geared towards mental health with these youth. So our goals for today with this presentation are to increase the understanding of signs, symptoms, and treatment options for mental illness, to increase our understanding of coping skills and the importance of them, and to increase the understanding of effects of stigma on helping on the help-seeking behaviors of family members and persons with mental illness, right? Stigma impacts a lot of what families and individuals who are struggling with mental illness are willing to do or what steps they're willing to take. And so really the effects of that stigma and how we can break those stigma down. And we're going to be doing all this through the lens of foster care and adoption. So really, right, trying to focus this as much as possible on this one area that impacts mental illness. So for those of you who are not familiar, maybe all of you are, foster care, our goal in the world of foster care throughout the states, the goal is to help primary families overcome the challenges that led to the removal of their children to enable reunification. We do hear about how there is adoption through foster care, but your number one priority is reunification. So caregivers of foster youth, so the foster parents, are trained to help children overcome the struggles they faced in their primary families, while still working with the primary families for reunification while the youth still are working towards going back home. These struggles can include, but are not limited to, abuse, neglect, which lead to mental illness, which lead to attachment difficulties, depression, anxiety, all things that we will look at in coming minutes. So for those who don't know, many years ago, the United States got rid of orphanages. We did this as a country because we believe that children belong in a family setting, that children thrive better in a family environment rather than institutionalized. It gives more attention, positive affirmation, health.
Looks like we lost Rosalynne. I will see if I can let her in just a moment.
Hey.
You're back. We're here.
I'm so sorry about that. Literally everything just like died. Never had that happen before. So let me get this back up.
So you were right in the middle of describing the move from the institutionalization with orphanages to the family setting of foster care.
And I get you to share screen with me, privileges. Well, I apologize, everybody. Please bear with us. My computer was like, there's been a system failure. We're shutting down. And I had my two screens going, but not my laptop. So we are back though. So with youth who are coming from international countries for international adoption, we're still seeing issues where they're not getting enough attention, support, they're crying for a really long time, they're not getting fed on schedule, things of that nature, because the ratio of youth to adults does not meet for the babies, the infant, the toddler, what an aged child's needs are being met. So that was the goal of foster care, was that we could provide individualized attention support with that nurturing and that affection that young children need, which is crucial to development. So foster care versus kinship care, these are terminologies in the United States that kind of go very hand in hand. So kinship care is when youth live with family members, friends, or another supportive adult in their life. These people have been cleared by Division of Children and Family Services in the county or state where the individual lives to be safe individuals. They're having the same background checks, home inspections that foster parents are having, but they're not necessarily licensed the way a foster parent would be because they have a personal connection to the child. And so the goal is keeping them out of the system officially. It's like a step into the system. Our county is involved, but they are not licensed and full force. And so financially, there's not as much support as with foster care, or do you have an agency such as Bellefaire necessarily giving support? With that being said, in the state of Ohio, actually, Governor DeWine has really been pushing for kinship caregivers to become licensed foster parents. This is to increase not just financial supports, but the therapeutic supports. What we're finding is that a lot of kinship parents are overwhelmed. Kinship caregivers are dealing with youth who are really traumatized, really struggling, and that there's not enough access to resources to help with that mental illness. And so that's where this has been a huge push by Governor DeWine. All right, so next, attachment. In the world of foster care and in adoption, this is huge. Move that out of your way. So attachment refers to a special emotional and social connection between children and their caregivers. This emerges during the first years of life. We have attachment at all stages, but what happens during your first years of life is critical to future development of healthy relationships, ongoing relationships, and healthy development outside of even relationships. So there is umbrella, you have attachment at the top with secure and insecure attachment. So children who are securely attached have less reactions that are extreme to stress, right? We all can't handle stress great, but some of us better than others, but it's going to be less extreme. They're going to be more willing to be independent and go out on their own to try new things and explore versus stick with what they know. They're going to have better problem solving skills, form better relationships with other people in and outside of the family unit, and they're going to trust more easily. So when we're looking at insecure attachment, hallmarks of an insecure attachment are mistrust of people, struggles making healthy relationships, and then it breaks down further into your different types of attachment. So there are 3 different types of insecure attachment. Not sure if you guys have heard of these before, but to kind of Matt is going to share the PowerPoint with anyone who wants afterwards, but to kind of give you a breakdown, this chart focuses as children and adults. I'm really going to focus this presentation on the child side, and feel free to check out the adult side on your own or come back and ask questions. Ambivalent attachment. These youth, when they have an ambivalent attachment, they're wary of strangers. When their parents leave, they get distressed. Now, when we're thinking of healthy, securely attached kids and you take them to daycare or kindergarten for the first time, they might cry because you left them. That's healthy development. These kids are like standing back. They can't let themselves trust. There's an extra level of distrust beyond just your typical tearful separation from parent concerns. And when the parent returns from leaving them at school, daycare, the doctor's office, where have you, they're not comforted. The parent cannot reassure this child that they're okay. Whereas with a securely attached child, you come back in the room and say, honey, I'm here. They're so relieved to see you. And an avoidant child, they're going to avoid their parent, standoffish. They're not going to want to see contact or comfort. So when they're crying, no, you can't help me, go away. Pushing them off could be violent, could be verbal, depends on the level of development of the child. And there's no preference for strangers, for parents over strangers. They're fine with going up to the man on the street as compared to their parent, because at the end of the day, their parent doesn't give them that bond that they're looking for. When you have a disorganized insecure attachment, you're taking this avoidance and this resistant behavior and you're combining it all into one. So these youth are apprehensive, they're dazed, they're confused, they don't know which way to turn, and they are just all over the place. And so youth, what I've seen in working with adoptive youth especially, is they can have hallmarks of different types of insecure attachment. It doesn't necessarily have to be perfectly in one box, which can make it really exhausting as a parent or caregiver. How do I meet this child's needs? How do I overcome their insecure attachment that they've developed early on? But don't worry, there are strategies, there are things to help. So those are the different types of attachment styles, but when you have insecure attachment, it can come to the level of diagnostic criteria for the DSM-5. Our diagnostic and statistical manual that is given out to us, there are people reference as the ICD-10. So we're going to start with reactive attachment disorder. I'm going to share with you all the features. So with a reactive attachment child, they're not going to be easily comforted because they don't want comfort. They're pushing people away. It is a tug of war game. You might feel as a parent or a caregiver, a yo-yo. I want you. I don't want you. No, you can't help me. Yes, you can help me. Leave me alone. No, no, where they're just fighting because they're not sure they can trust. Even if you, the caregiver who has adopted or has for years fostered the child, are showing them, I'm a safe, healthy person. I will be there for you. Their history, their youth, their early years of not being able to rely on their caregiver, on their parent, makes it very hard to stop that push-pull within the episodes. So you're going to have irritability, sadness, fearfulness, which could lead to verbal aggression, could lead to physical aggression. It can be really difficult because all these youth do is they put up these barriers to keep people away from them. They don't want people coming close because that threatens them. Whereas on the disinhibited social engagement side of things, these youth, they will run up to strangers. They will be overly physical and verbal, right? You could see a kid run up and give you a hug and you're like, well, I don't know you, right? That could be a really cute 3-year-old who just has no boundaries, or it could be an older kid who is really struggling with attachment and just is looking for it in all the wrong places. We, especially in the world of foster care, really watch out for this in terms of the human trafficking population and how can we help these youth feel supported so that they don't have to interact with unsafe individuals and put themselves into harm's way. So these youth are definitely something to watch out for if you are in the foster care world. So I'm assuming if any of you guys have been to a NAMI presentation before, you've definitely heard about adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. I'm gonna skip the video due to my technical struggles, but definitely feel free to check it out. It is on YouTube. The short version is it shows a young boy who is everywhere in his community. He's looking. There are adverse childhood experiences, death of relatives, poverty, community violence, school violence, right? Anything you can envision happening that can go wrong in this video. This poor story has everything go wrong that can. And so check it out if you want. It's a 4-minute clip. So youth in foster care will have adverse child experiences. By definition, just being, oh, Maria, I love that question. Typically, no, you won't see both diagnoses. You will only see someone having an adverse child, either reactive attachment or disinhibited, because they're so polar opposites, where one person is running to, right, and disinhibited, you're running towards people, you're seeking all this gratification, all this love, and reactive attachment, you're pushing it away. So you're going to be really in one camp. It's a great question. Back to the ACEs, youth in foster care will have ACEs, right? By simply being removed from their home, that is an adverse childhood experience. The trauma, the abuse, or the neglect that led to their removal, whether it's their parents' substance abuse, their parents' mental illness, domestic violence, exploitation, what have you, that was an adverse childhood experience. So you're starting off at least with 2 when an initial removal, if not more, based off the family socioeconomic status, living environment, so on and so forth. So example of ACEs. So experiencing a parental divorce or separation, having a family member who is incarcerated, living with a family member who is addicted to alcohol or other substances, living with a family member who is depressed or has another mental illness, experiencing physical and emotional or emotional neglect, experiencing physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, witnessing domestic violence, such as like a mother or a father being abused, right? The list goes, community violence, school violence, all those factor in. Also things like terroristic activity, a natural disaster, a fire, these all things, right, that come into factor as well. So how do we help these youth who have experienced these ACEs lessen the consequence of them so that they don't grow up to be victimized by their early childhood experiences by these ACEs? So one, that's the role of the foster care program that the state's created, is to reduce the negative impact on growth and development. Ultimately, right, that could feed into adoption, and where adoptive parents are also helping with reducing it. But through foster care, through removal from these adverse experiences, as much as the removal is another ACEs, by taking them out of that environment, we're hoping to put a youth in a safe, stable place that they don't have it compounded, and they can start early on working to resolve the inner struggle that has come from their abuse or neglect, et cetera, et cetera. So to do this, we have to build on a child's resilience. Children are incredibly resilient, right? They, even when they've gone through such hardships, they have this just like innate ability to stand back up and do it again. It doesn't matter how many times they fall off the ladder at the jungle gym, they're going to do it again. They very rarely stop trying. So we do it through support. So how do we, as foster parents, as caregivers, as adoptive parents, as family members or friends of people who are working with foster youth and adoptive youth, positive parenting skills, right? There are methodologies out there such as love and logic parenting, the nurtured heart approach, that are really geared towards positive parenting skills by helping children with social and emotional health, by teaching them, by coaching them, by modeling them, by involving them, surrounded by people who can exhibit strong social emotional health. Close relationships with competent caregivers or other caring adults. So I have one adoptive family that I'm working with right now, and their daughter struggles with reactive attachment. And all the time I have to remind them, you might still be suffering from the struggles of your daughter's reactive attachment, but you continue to give her a close relationship and continue to care for her and use positive parenting skills, she's getting healthier. You can see the change. There's less explosive incidents. There's less pushback, even though we're on average 1 day a week is still really a rough day. Communities that support health and development are really huge. Wrapping your children in an environment that is friendly, that is open, that is understanding, that is not going to talk about the stigmas of mental health, that is, oh my gosh, let's wrap, schools, having those social workers, having those psychologists, having those counselors to be supportive. Concrete support for parents and families. And that's where one place NAMI comes into play. Having these support groups, having these educational seminars, because you guys can't do it alone. You've got to have places you can turn. And COVID definitely made that really hard. And I know a lot of agencies, including Bellefaire, are trying to get our in-person groups back up and running as well. Have a sense of purpose. So what does the child like to do? What does that child want to do? Why are they here? Giving them even a kid-driven mission. Problem-solving skills and building self-esteem are huge. Parental resilience and social connections. Working with a child who has ACEs, working with a child who has attachment difficulties, you're gonna lean on your social connections. You can't do it alone, right? Parenting by ourselves, we can't do it alone even with the healthiest of child. But with these kids, those social avenues for both the child and the adults are huge. So the hopelessness cycle. So how do you break the cycle? So kind of review it, right? So we'll start at the top. I see the adult gets angry and frustrated. They then make threats or lectures they can't back up. So, right, I'm as a parent, I'm really frustrated and I say like, I'm gonna do this to you. You're not gonna go to school. I'm keeping you home from school. that's not realistic. I'm sending you to school. I legally have to. So some parents will try to take all my stuff away. That's what the kid is thinking. And the kid will say, I don't care. I've already lost everything that I care about. You took my bio parents away from me. You took my siblings away. You took my community away. I don't care. So then some parents will yell at me more. Well, I'm used to being yelled at. I actually like being yelled at. Some parents will give up on me. I'm used to this too. Everyone gives up on me. So then I, as the child, am going to scream, yell, hit, destroy something. Or on the other side, become withdrawn and just depressed and don't engage. Because I think if the adults in my life can't handle me, I must be a completely hopeless case. There's no helping me. I'm a lost cause. Just everybody leave me alone. Which in turn causes me to feel, act, and be more hopeless and out of control. Because I just feel like the more and more nobody can help me. So to break the cycle, the best advice I ever received and I give to my families is when you don't know what to do, or you are too angry to think straight, buy yourself some time. Take a break, right? As a parent, not everything has to be addressed, or a caregiver has to be addressed right now. It's okay to say, hey, Cindy, I'm going to need a couple minutes and we'll come back and talk about this. I really hope you can give me that 5 minutes. If that means locking yourself in your bedroom, okay. If that means taking the dog for a walk outside, okay. Or just letting the kid be on their technology wherever they have to. You can always come back and address it later, because a kid in their emotion mind, nothing's going to be accomplished. We want to build the hope cycle. And the hope cycle is when the child says, when I do something upsetting, I see the adult taking time to calm down and to think, right? Time to think, not just reacting. I hear the adult say a very healthy and loving thing, which in turn, I, as a child, say, I make better decisions when I'm calm. So let's talk about this later. The adult shows their love and commitment by meeting my needs for love and loving discipline. They help me learn to problem solve and to make restitution. They're not just punishing me saying, give me your technology, go to your room for 10 minutes. They're having me apologize. They're having me fix my mistake. Maybe I punched a hole in the wall, and so I have to work with my foster dad to patch that hole to make it right and learn a skill in the process, which helps them, the child, see that they can handle their emotions and their struggles, which allows a new pattern of thinking, right? So they're starting to think, if the adults in my life can handle me with such ease, there must be hope for me, which leads to calmer feelings and behavior. So the takeaway from the hope cycle is when we allow ourselves to handle situations in calm and thoughtful ways, we can help kids develop a new neural pathway. Now I'm gonna stop here for a minute. This isn't easy. We're all human. And at some point, when we're dealing with a very indignant, disrespectful, disruptive, struggling child, it's really hard not to react. And that's where the parents and caregivers' social skills, social connections, coping skills all come into play, because it really does take a village to raise these kids. So 10 warnings of mental illness in youth. Most of these, I bet you guys are going to be like, oh yeah. So first, they're sad and withdrawn for 2+ weeks. They could be crying, they could be fatigued, they could be unmotivated, refusing to get out of bed, seriously trying to harm or kill oneself, or making plans to, right? It's not that they are. When you see a note in the diary that says something, you got to take it seriously and report out. Severe out of control risk-taking behaviors. This is really dependent on the child, on what the severity of those risk-taking behaviors are. For some kids, it's less severe than others, because it's where is the child's baseline when you first met them. When a child is overwhelmed with fear for no reason, with physiological symptoms, so it's racing heart, sweating a lot, sticky palms, they can't sit still, a lot of fidgeting, those are all good signs of being overwhelmed with fear. Not eating, throwing up, using laxatives. So extreme weight gain or loss that you can't quantify, doesn't make sense how this is happening. Severe mood swings that alienate others. use of drugs and alcohol repeatedly, right? We know our teenagers, unfortunately, do a lot of experimentation, but this is repeatedly, you know, you don't have to wait till it's out of control, but definitely, right, that repeated use that is becoming abuse. Drastic changes in behavior, personality, or sleeping habits. Difficulty concentrating or staying still that could lead to physical danger and or school failure. And intense worries or fears that impacts the activities and the way a child is interacting on a day-to-day basis. So if you're seeing one or more of these signs in a child, reach out for help, reach out for guidance, talk to the pediatrician. That's a great place to start and to get some guidance. What's really interesting with youth in the foster care and adoption world is that a lot of things look like ADHD that actually are trauma, and vice versa. There's a huge overlap between trauma and ADHD. The things that are the overlap is concentrating is really hard for youth with trauma and youth with ADHD. Being easily distracted, right? Because youth with trauma are hypervigilant. They're always watching around them. And so that leads to distractibility, whereas we know a hallmark of attention deficit disorder is distraction. Other overlaps are that they often don't seem to listen. And that can come from a place of reactive attachment and the lack of trust, or the ADHD that they're just moving too fast. The hyperactive and disorganized, restless, and difficulty sleeping. In fact, difficulty sleeping is a hallmark of almost every mental illness. Almost every diagnosis talks about trouble sleeping and irritability. And so how, as a clinician or as a parent, you're trying to ascertain, well, is it this or is it that? Irritability and sleep difficulties are going to be one of the hallmarks that you have to look beyond those two areas. So it's really important that as caregivers, we don't get into diagnosing our kids because there's so much overlap. And if we misdiagnose the child, we really can miss the mark, whether it's medication or therapy, and not make sure we're supporting the child the proper way possible. In the States, we're really quick to label youth, especially young children with ADHD. And there's really a push to slow down treatment in a lot of ways for ADHD to make sure that's really what's going on. It's not across the board though. Okay, mental health in children versus adults really looks different. So again, I'm going to focus on the youth side, but definitely take a look on the adult side, and feel free to keep this handy because, like I said, it really does change, right? When we're young, we're going to have more externalizing behaviors. We're going to treat it more to other people. We're going to hit, we're going to scream, we're going to run away, we're going to destroy and damage things. When we're young, we're not taking it out on ourselves. We take it out on everybody else. Puberty certainly makes it more difficult, because of all those hormonal changes. Just that testosterone or estrogen coursing through our veins, everything changing, just makes it more complex. Kids, we're not self-regulated. Like, the nature of being a child is struggling to self-regulate. And so when we're taking children with mental illness, it's just that much more exacerbated their lack of self-regulation skills, and why so much of child therapy focuses on developing self-regulation skills and how can I better express myself, because at age 25, our prefrontal cortex is fully developed, and so we can self-regulate better. But if we think about it, age 25, we've been off in the army, we've gone to college, we've been driving for years, we're doing lots of stuff that are adult before our prefrontal cortex is fully developed. Teenagers, by definition, are oppositional. So that oppositional pattern of behavior that we're looking at with youth, it can be that much more exacerbated when there is mental illness involved. Difficulty with emotion identification, right? What is really behind that? And we have to watch behavior so much more in children, because the kid can't just say, hey, I am really depressed right now. Everything is sad and mad. Maria, are you asking, like, could the child never develop past a stage of development?
Yeah, on your chart here, from young going to adult.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, some people are stuck. Yeah, some people are just stuck and they really can't get out of that teenage or whatever stage of development, and they are stunted in their development. And a lot of that can be from the trauma that or their ACEs that they've experienced, that they are just stunted and they never grow into adulthood and their brain never fully develops. And so, yeah, you'll have adults who look like children in their emotional development and maturity. So that's a great point. Our goal is to help lessen the consequences of those ACEs so that we can get youth to be more adult. But there are those cases where, yeah, they never fully reach it just because of the damage to their brain that has occurred in the early years. The other thing that often with young children, there are a lot of psychosomatic complaints. My head hurts, my stomach hurts, that is at level 10 levels. So I just need my stomach amputated. It has to go. I need a new stomach. I'm gonna die. That is completely, and meds don't make them feel good, or then they're completely out of sync because you offer me Tylenol to make me feel better. Well, you're trying to poison me, or it can get completely out of control. So depression in kids, a lot more anger than sadness a lot of times, because children really struggle just being sad. They really show anger and a lot of social withdrawal. So we really have to watch. It's really hard this day and age with so much computer time and video games. A lot of kids would rather just sit in their house and be video game centric than like out in the backyard playing with friends. That's not what it means by social withdrawal. So it's a baseline of where your kid starts, because we have a new norm of what socialization looks like in the 21st century. The other thing what you have to watch for with depression, especially, is the failure to make expected weight gains. And that's where you're working with your pediatrician. There are other reasons kids don't grow, and it is not always because of mental illness. So that's where don't jump to conclusions, meet with this pediatrician, and they will help guide you in the right direction. And if they're concerned, they'll make the right referrals. Post-traumatic stress disorder. So in children, it's a lot of disorganized, all over the place, agitated behavior that leads to a lot of opposition, where they're not listening and even reenacting of the behaviors. So when you hear of children who have been sexually abused, when they are abusing other children, it is not because they are truly perpetrators in a lot of the situations. They are reenacting what happened to them. A lot of nightmares, and a lot of youth with PTSD engage in self-injury. And this is really hard because in the foster care world, we tend to know about some levels of the abuse that the family or the child experienced, but we don't know all of it, especially after they've initially come into care. So we need to not overwatch and over assume, but we have to be really mindful of what do we not know about. ADHD. In children, the children are more hyper, whereas adults are more inattentive. So typically for any of us who have adults in our lives who we think or we know have ADHD, they're not bouncing off the walls at work. They're more just like checking out outside the mirror, the window, everywhere else, but paying attention in that meeting. Anxiety, kids are tearful, tantruming, they freeze a lot, and they avoid. Right? So they're not going to want to go to school. If they have maybe some social anxiety or specific phobia, they're going to have a lot of tantrums, and it's going to be really hard to get out of the house. And everything's going to take more time because they don't have the words to say, I'm scared, I'm afraid. But they're having more emotional outbursts, whereas in adults, it's more of a panic attack. We feel like we're going to have a heart attack because we have more of that emotion regulation, where we know it's not okay to throw a temper tantrum. We're more developed and mature in a lot of cases, but we're having it manifest in a different way. In youth, there are two very specific youth diagnoses, oppositional defiant disorder and conduct disorder. My disclaimer on these diagnoses, and I say this to my team all the time when we're diagnosing our new foster youth when they come into our treatment network, what is teenage behavior and what is truly disruptive behavior? What is mental health and diagnostically concerning versus, again, what is just teenage opposition, and defiance. So in the world of ODD, there's an ongoing pattern of anger guided disobedience. So it's not just no, there's a extra blow up, right? That losing their temper, arguing back and forth with adults. A lot of teenagers, when they're defiant, they say yes and they do opposite, or they just say no and they let it go. But when you're at the oppositional nature that is clinically driven, you're going back and forth with the adult. You can't stop yourself. The active defiance or refusing to comply with rules and requests is like not just on one or two things. Like teenagers might be like, I'm supposed to make my bed and I'm not going to make my bed. We're talking about larger scale, more frequent, more problematic than just like the few chores around the house a kid is supposed to do. Being touchy or easily annoyed. Being angry or resentful, and spiteful and vindictive. So the spiteful and the vindictive is probably the hardest ones for my foster parents, or foster parents I've worked with in general, because you give so much to these kids and they just come back at you and they just tear you down. And it's draining and it's exhausting to live with someone who is like that. And when you've done nothing but be respectful and kind and try to help this youth out. And so I think that particular element is, right, teenagers can be pretty sharp to begin with, but it's the way in which that spiteful and vindictive nature of an oppositional defiant kid is, they just don't care. It's not you, it's me, truly, that their own issues are leading to them taking it out on you. Conduct disorder is the next level. So at the time you're talking about a conduct disorder, there is a complete disregard for rules and behaving in a socially acceptable way. So these kids are impulsive and hard to control and don't care about other people. But like, it's not just about me. It's truly, I just don't care about you. These are like, in some cases, people say like budding antisocial personality youth. Not necessarily true, but these are kids who are very, very, very hurt. So these kids are running away from home. These kids are stealing, breaking into people's places, setting fires, hurting animals on a repetitive and persistent basis, not just one time. So these are really and truly kids who are really struggling with aggression and with destruction and deception. And these kids, it truly is behavioral. You can work with them on talking about their feelings, but it goes so much deeper that their core of who they are is now just a disruptive, behaviorally challenged young person. So when you're working with these youth, you really have to use trauma-informed care. So the principles are helping the child feel safe, emotional and physical safety, right? We can have a safe house, but if I don't feel emotionally safe, doesn't matter that my basic needs are met in a safe environment. You have to display trustworthiness and transparency. So clarity and consistency. These youth do not do well when things are not consistent. That includes having healthy boundaries with the youth, right? Interpersonal boundaries, professional boundaries. My clients know that if they don't call me and leave a message, I'm not calling them back. So they need to just say, hey, it's me, call me. And that's all I need. I don't need to know what's going on, but just leave me that message. Collaboration and mutuality. This is their life, and so much of their life feels completely out of control. They didn't choose to be put in foster care. They didn't choose to be adopted. They didn't choose A, B, C, D, E, F, G in their life. So how do we help them make decisions and share that power in their life? Because it is their life. So how do we help them with planning and evaluating? And okay, I'm going to middle school, right? I'm going to go, well, what classes am I going to take in my 6th grade year versus like mom just picking the classes? Empowerment and choice. Youth voice, youth choice is one of the hallmarks of trauma-informed care. They need to feel control. That doesn't mean that your child gets to pick their curfew or check the rules, but there are ways you can give choice, right? You can do X or you can do Y. Which one would you rather do? Okay. If you do X, this is the A, B, and C that's going to come from it, and things of that nature. So right? What are their rights? What are their responsibilities? So in our foster homes, all of our parents and all of the kids when they're placed get their clients' rights. They also know that first day of placement what the rules of the home are and what their responsibilities are. And typically it's keep your room clean, clean up after dinner, and be a good student. That's really for the most part it, but that's laying it out when they first get in the home. And obviously things change as you're in a home, but as you're changing those expectations or those responsibilities, being transparent with the youth so that there's no questions asked. I always say to people, do it in writing also, because then you have a written history. Also, skill build, working on strengthening your skills and their skills. The other thing to think about with trauma-informed care is we have to take into account culture, history, and gender, right? We need to create an atmosphere that is supportive and helps reduce that fear that these youth have come from, because history doesn't go away. Culture impacts who we are and what we're comfortable with, and gender issues, same thing. So what are some important coping skills for children and adolescents? One, consistency and predictability. So rules and expectations being laid out, known, sticking to them, not changing them. Schedules and routine. When I come home from school, I can always expect that my foster mom will be there and that I will have a snack on the table. Or my foster mom won't be there, but she will have left the key for me. And when I come in, I can go in the fridge and I will find my sandwich. Whatever the example may be. Planning ahead and future planning. So if there's going to be a change and you typically are home when your child comes home, but this one day you have a doctor's appointment and you're not going to be there, letting them know, helping them walk through each step until you're going to be able to be back to that normal routine so that they're not caught off guard, and doing that with enough warning that it's not all of a sudden. Consistency with your response. So while that feels like that's a coping skill for the adult, that helps the child know, when I do this, my caregiver is going to do A, B, because that more predictable they have, the less reactive they'll be. And helping them prep for flexibility. There are always going to be changes. It doesn't matter how many schedules and routines and consistent things you build, changes are going to happen. So helping them plan for that to be flexible. So as they're comfortable, saying, okay, let's shift it one little way. Another huge one is mindfulness, deep breathing. Now, a lot of youth will do this wrong. And so that's where it's really helping them breathe in a safe way, like they're running a marathon, because otherwise that deep breathing will just work them all the way back up. Some people will be listening to calm music, saying positive phrases, I am safe now, reassuring phrases. Other people, it's doing yoga, playing soccer, going fishing. There are other coping skills that are more complex, but these are things everyone can do within the safety of their own space. The other really important coping skill for kids is safety talk. So how do we help a youth feel that they are not just physically safe, but also psychologically? Their needs are going to be met. They're going to have fair and consistent discipline. And these have to be constant. These conversations with real active listening. You can't be like thinking about your bills or what you're going to make for dinner, really with the youth to help figure out how can we make you feel safe. And when the youth says, I need you to tuck me in at night, okay, we're going to tuck you in at night, right? Like we got to ask them what it is and then follow up with it. And if they're not sure, sit in that silence. When we rush a kid to make a choice, then they feel pressured and they don't feel safe. So for the adults, those of us going through working with these difficult kids, these kids who are really struggling with ACEs and trauma, my biggest recommendations for you guys are track your youth behavior. The more understanding of the behavior, the better the relationship builds, the stronger it gets. The more you can understand patterns and triggers and really understand for yourself. Biggest thing though, stay regulated. Few words and a firm, calm tone. When we are in a mood, our brains are doing this, and no words. We're not going to hear words when our brain is rapid firing. more words, the more angry we get because we can't process what you're saying. So less words is better. You are safe. I want to help you with this. Setting limits. Children might and teenagers might fight limits, especially when they're not used to it, but they need them. That keeps them, it shows them that you care, that you will keep them safe. And so limits is huge and helps you stay regulated. Help label feelings. You can do this by modeling. I'm feeling really stressed. What are you feeling? I don't know. Do you think you might be feeling overwhelmed? Because there's been a lot going on lately. And working with the child through that discussion. Scaling questions. Scaling, right? Using the 1 through 10, how bad's your pain? How bad was your day? How angry are you? You might, with these youth, you have a different anger scale that you use, or different, versus a pain scale versus that you can pull out that really is individualized to your child. But helping you understand when the kid says, I'm at 10. Okay, they're just at such a dysregulated level that they can't actually engage right now and can give you information as a parent to help you stay regulated and make a plan. Offer choices. These have to be choices that you're willing to follow through with. So don't ever give an option that you're not open to, but offer them choices. I always say no more than 3, right? It really should be this or that. Because if you give too many choices, it overwhelms. And then you as the parent are also not in control and able to stay regulated. When all said and done and everything is calm, both you and the youth, you gotta debrief. And you can talk about how drained that whole incident made you feel. That debrief does not have to be the exact same day as the incident. It can be another day. It can be when a therapist comes out. But it's important to follow back up about what happened, because without that debrief, we're just sweeping it under the rug, and we can't do that. Nothing gets better if we just pretend it didn't happen. The other thing is pre-teaching to help reduce worry. So as a caregiver, thinking ahead, simple and positive, both in your words and your behaviors. Let's have a great day. We got this. Describe your expectations. Today, we're going to have a pretty good day. We're going to go to the grocery store and you're going to have 3 things that you can buy that aren't on the grocery list. But after that, everything else has to be on the grocery list. And then we'll come back and we'll make lunch. And then we'll plan the rest of the day. And answer questions. These kids will ask a lot of questions. Sometimes the questions will seem silly, but answer them and answer them honestly. And work really hard to stay regulated, because if they keep asking questions, you might get really frustrated and just be like, oh my God, can we have a question break? But you're helping them feel secure and understand how the day is going to go, or how things in general are going to go. Respite and self-care. We all need time for ourselves. Some people, it's getting a manicure, getting a massage, going out to play basketball with the guys, taking the dog for a walk. Whatever is your thing, you got to do it. But the self-care can't just be during the day. Respite is huge. So in the world of foster care, you can't just leave the child with anyone you want. Makes it a lot harder than in the adoption world. So it's setting up regular routine respite where you can get a night out with your significant other or a friend or whomever you want. Just grab dinner, to go away out of town for the weekend, and that you can have a safe, secure, approved person watch your children so you can decompress. And we need that, whether it's foster youth or adoptive youth. All of us who've raised children or been a child with our parents, we know that our parents need a break, because being a parent is a full-time, exhausting job. And it's okay to take that time. And that doesn't mean that the child's bad or draining. It's allowing you to be the best caregiver for that child. So myths and misconceptions about foster care. So first off the bat, fostering children is financially lucrative is the biggest misconception. Nobody gets rich fostering children. All foster children have been physically or sexually abused. Also untrue. Many foster youth come in because of family mental illness, parent incarceration, parental substance use or abuse, death of family members, and no one else is there to take care of them. There are no other kinship providers. Lots of different reasons kids come into foster care. You do not have to be married to be a foster parent. The state of Ohio and almost all the states are open to single parents. In Ohio, the law says 18 or older to be a foster parent. Nothing else is listed regarding marital status or age. You do not need to be a homeowner. You can rent. You just need to have a home with a bedroom for that child. A child does need to have their own room unless they're under 1 year of age, and then they can for that first year stay in the same room, but do require their own bed. Foster parents cover medical insurance. Nope. So for those of you who aren't aware, all youth in foster care are on Medicaid. And if you adopt a child from the foster care system, they will keep Medicaid through their 18th birthday. So that is one where you do not have the medical expense. I don't have a choice in the child who is placed with me. Typically, that's untrue. I can't guarantee you across the board because every agency, every network is going to be different. But most places, you have a choice. At minimum, there is a document that is 6 pages long with lots of information called the Child Characteristics Checklist. This is where you are identifying every characteristic from race to age to gender to mental illness to physical ailment and beyond that you can think of, from severe to moderate to mild, that a child can have, and what you're willing to accept or not accept, what you feel like you can handle or not handle. And so without a doubt, you are picking what are you okay with, and then your agency should present to you each child for you to say, I'll accept. I don't have parenting experience, so I shouldn't be a foster parent. No, because just because you've been a parent doesn't mean that you truly are ready. So I'm going to skip ahead to stigma just because looking at time. So stigma comes from a lack of understanding or fear. So this really can a lot of times be perpetuated by our media standpoint. And so it's really careful what media outlets do you listen to, because they can really be harmful. Also, more than half of people with mental illness don't receive help for their disorders. And this is due to that treatment, due to the stigma, of just afraid of losing your jobs, your livelihood, your friendships, how people are going to look at you. And that's really what's amazing about NAMI, is how NAMI and its partner agencies are really trying to change it and say, it's okay. A lot of us have mental illness and you can still be successful. There's also within the foster care world a fear of child protective services and the foster care system. And so I want all of you guys to hear that children aren't removed without a high level of risk associated with staying in the primary family, right? We're not just coming in, or DCFS, who I partner with, is not just coming in and removing children for fun. It's really due to severe risk. And the goal is always reunification. So key takeaways from today. Peers. So for peers, we want to say that youth in foster care and adopted will always have ACEs. Consistency and predictability is essential, along with compassion and support. And you can always be a supporter through donations, mentoring, being a respite provider, or just advocating and sharing what you've learned here and other avenues to help reduce the stigma, the myths, and the prejudices that come with the world of foster care, adoption, and mental illness as a whole. To families who are in this world, you're not alone, and it's okay to ask for help. Make sure you build your allies and network of support. Also, build your routine, use safety talk, and remember, it truly does take a village. You need that network. And all behavior has meaning. The behavior isn't personal. It's not about you. It's not because of you. But what does that behavior mean? When the child does A, B, or C, what is that telling us? And for any professionals here today, I hope you can educate community members to break down the stigma, be creative in how you support families and individuals, and be patient. It's not easy work, and you got to practice that self-care, just like our foster parents and adoptive parents do, because it can be draining. And so just remember that. Resources in your local community. Bellefaire, we're here. There's also Adoption Network. Adopt America has ongoing adoption and kinship support. There are other resources as well. These were the ones I was highlighting, but if there is anything you need, don't hesitate to reach out. And there are some good resources also to read if you love to read. And when Matt sends out the PowerPoint, you guys will be able to see some of my suggestions. There are a lot more, but I didn't want to overwhelm you. Foster Klein is a big Love and Logic. You can get trained in the module. And Ross Green from Harvard University, all really great authors to read. So I really thank you guys for taking your time. Sorry about the technology issue at the beginning, but I really appreciate you all being here today. And Matt, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Rosalynne. This was very thorough and informative. I did put the link for the survey for today's presentation in the chat. I will do that again. It's an anonymous evaluation. Please complete that before we end today. So if you could click the link and complete that, it should take 2 or 3 minutes. That would be much appreciated. I will make sure that these slides are sent to you along with the evaluation link. I'll probably send that a little bit later today so that you can hold on to these slides. I know we're right at 1 o'clock, but if we have any final questions, maybe I could put them in the chat and we can address those before we close today. So floor is yours if anyone has any final questions for Rosalynne today. Just some nice comments in the chats thanking you for your presentation today, Rosalynne.
I appreciate you guys coming out. I know everyone has a busy life, so I really appreciate it. And like I said, I am happy. I'm going to put in my email into the chat so that if you guys ever have anything you need, you can reach out.
Looks like we had a question in here. Can you offer any suggestions for support that we can provide to foster families when they may not be able to share confidential information on the children they're fostering?
Yeah, so for starters, there is some information they should be able to share that doesn't give away their most specific and vulnerable information to know what's going on. But I think just being an ear to listen to, it's asking how you can support them too, right? What do you need? How can I support you? What can I give you is a huge opportunity because everyone's support, what they need looks different. Maybe it's just a girls' night or a guys' night or a family dinner and things of that nature, and feeling like, you know what, no one's not inviting me to events because I'm got this kid in tow who misbehaves, and making them feel like they can bring their child along with them. So it's hard because it's nothing specific to that child, but I think it's how you include that family into your life and what support and how you listen to their needs, more than knowing specifically what that child's life has been through on their trials and tribulations.
Thank you. If we have no other questions, then I'm happy to close out the webinar and let everyone go on with their Tuesday. Thank you again, Rosalynne, for generously donating your time and expertise to educating the NAMI community on this topic. And thank you all for being here today. Hope you have a great day.